Very much, Courtney, joined by Scott Henning from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. You love stuff like that, hey? Donor-based infrastructure projects like Light the Bridge?
Absolutely, it's perfect.
Yeah. Hey, Scott, before we get into talk on the Canadian Senate, because we brought Scott in and we want you to make sense of all this scandal talk for us, but I have to ask you, let's from a municipal perspective, Mayor Stephen Mandel won't seek a fourth term. From a Taxpayers Federation standpoint, how will you characterize his legacy?
Well, I mean, we always, we tended to butt heads, especially on the arena issue and some of the other ones like Expo. I mean, the guy was a master at getting consensus on council. He was a master on not going to votes when he knew he was going to lose. I mean, the arena deal, as much as I would have liked to see it different, it would be dead if it wasn't for Stephen Mandel. That's going to be his legacy, is going to be the arena.
All right. You know, let's get to talk out of Ottawa now. A lot of people are talking about Senator Mike Duffy and, of course, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Nigel Wright, resigning after a $90,000 check. Blah, 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 blah. What's the main issue here? What's the big deal? What do we need to understand here? Yeah,
I mean, it's about accountability and transparency when it comes to Senate expenses. I mean, these are all stemming from expenses. I mean, we have Patrick Brazeau, who's now an independent senator, not only facing charges on other issues, but told that he owes $30,000 back in claims that he made that he wasn't living where he said he was living. So, I mean, they said they were living elsewhere. They were actually living in Ottawa. They were claiming a housing allowance, like they were living, like they were living in Alberta, or they're living elsewhere. Same with Mac Harper, Liberal, now former Liberal, he's now an independent senator, and Mike Duffy, now a former Conservative. They're all independents now. Even Pamela Wallin's now an independent. We have a huge caucus of independent senators now that are being forced out of their caucuses because of these spending scandals.
And you've got taxpayers, or let's just say we've got Canadians that are going, should we expect more of senators? I mean, when you think of the Senate, is it too much to expect a little bit more accountability? I also want to ask another rhetorical question. Mike Duffy, Pamela Wallin, both former journalists, both retired broadcasters. I mean, it seems to me to be somewhat of an ignorant move.
Well, I mean, you think they would know how this was going to look. I mean, especially the Nigel Wright thing. I mean, collecting a check from someone for $90,000 when you're told you have to pay it back and you're just having someone else pay it back for you. The optics of that is bad. I mean, don't be wrong. I'm happy that it's not some corporation that's paying the money back. At least it's some guy that probably isn't trying to buy influence. But you should pay it back. You're the one that got trouble. You should pay it back, and you should know the optics of this as a former journalist would look terrible. So,
well, it's kind of an interesting situation too, isn't it? Nigel Wright. I mean, we don't know everything about him, but what we do know is that he had an outstanding professional career before he was chief of staff. He amassed a great deal of personal wealth. Some people are saying, well, why shouldn't he be able to cut a check to whoever he likes? It's a gift.
He can. He absolutely can. You know what? And frankly, it looks bad because Duffy didn't sort of learn his lesson. That's why it looks bad. I'm actually, if you're going to pick anyone to cut a personal check to Mike Duffy, the second most powerful person in the country as the chief of staff of the Prime Minister, probably the better than one of the best ones you could have. I mean, it could be some company president that paid this check, and now Mike Duffy owes him a bunch of favors, and that would be a lot worse than the second most powerful man in the country.
So you got to know. I mean, everybody talks about how Stephen Harper, behind closed doors or below the surface, is a guy you don't want to mess with. He's been known as this strategist who, without necessarily the greatest or the greasiest personal communication skills, found his way into the Prime Minister's office. You have to assume, even though he didn't take questions yesterday, that his blood was boiling a little bit more than he let on.
I would think so. I mean, his own chief of staff not telling him that they were doing this.
Do you believe that, by the way?
I do. I think that Stephen Harper's smart enough to know that if his chief of staff came to him and said, "Hey, I'm going to cut Duffy the check," he would have said, "No, you can't do that," because they know they're going to get caught. You have to know nowadays you can't get away with anything. You're going to get caught. Mike Duffy was going to have to declare it at some point that he got this check. From Nigel Wright. So he was going to have to declare it at some point. So this was going to come out. I think Harper would have vetoed it had he known. So
you got to. I mean, it just maybe I shouldn't say this. I should sound a little bit more objective here, but it sounds to me like the entitlement that's oozing through the halls of the Senate. I mean, hey, and we're talking now. I mean, should the Senate be abolished? Should it move to an elected Senate? We're still waiting on the Supreme Court ruling there. We'll have to bring you back to talk about that because we're out of time, Scott. But it's always nice to connect with you.
My pleasure.
Scott Hennig with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. We'll be back with news, traffic, and weather right after this, just about 6:28 Wednesday morning. You got to give it up, baby. Tell me Plenty of responses pouring in when it comes to who you'd like to see replace Stephen Mandel as mayor of Edmonton. Gizmo Williams, a good suggestion on our Facebook page. We'll get to more of your comments in just a bit. Plus, say what? Right after this newscast. Michelle?
Thank you, Ryan. A gorgeous day ahead. Guess what? Another windy day. We'll head to 22 for a daytime high. Lots of blue sky. We're 12 degrees right now. Carla, hang on to your hat.
Okay, we've been warned. I thought that's what we had to do yesterday. Well, coming up in the next few minutes, we'll take a full look at your BT3D traffic map. There are a number of construction projects wrapping up today. Some more good news coming up next. Courtney?